Hello, everyone. Welcome to our social value podcast. We thought it was an important part of our GX to talk about sustainability and for us to give an overview as to what Gamma's doing around social value. I'm Sam Winterbottom, Public Sector Director at Gamma. So obviously we have a lot of public sector customers who are interested in social value. And I'm joined by Chris Smith, who's our ESG Programme Manager, and by Callum Lydon, our Environmental Data Manager. So guys, thanks very much for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about our environmental programs within Gamma?
Yeah, so it's probably pertinent to start with actually what are our problem areas, what are the things that we need to focus on, because that really drives what the programs are.
This is something we've dedicated a lot of time and resource to over the past 5 years, doing really accurate calculations and to try and quantify our emissions so that we can let all of our stakeholders know where it is precisely that our impact lies. So if we just, I guess, go back to basics really and start discussing our direct emissions, that's scope 1 and 2. Our two biggest emission sources, I should say, come from our company fleet and our electricity consumption, which is primarily driven by the consumption at our dedicated data centre up in Manchester. And I know, Chris, you've been working on a series of initiatives to reduce the impacts of not just those, but other scope 1 and 2 emission sources.
Yeah, so we've got, the guys over at our data centre actually they've been really environmentally conscious for some time. So I've been in post in Gamma for about 12 months now, and the work that they've been doing predates my appointment. And the sorts of things that we're doing over there to reduce consumption are really in line with the sort of data center management best practices, the things that are coming out of those forums of that industry in particular. Obviously, it's growing. It's going to sort of go off the scale really with AI. So there's lots and lots of focus on that. But they, to say that's only come to the fore in the last year, 18 months, 2 years with AI is it's a bit of a fallacy. These guys have been at it for some time. The things that they're doing, the things that we've completed already is optimizing sort of the air conditioning, the cooling systems within the data center itself. And what I mean by that is they've implemented what's called cold aisles. So all the servers are pointing in the same direction so that hot air is blowing out in the same direction. And they've boxed off each of the aisles so that the air conditioning or the cooling is pushing cold air into a really contained part of the rooms that are over there at our data center. So it's actually, they're not cooling the entire room. You don't walk into it and it's absolutely freezing like it used to be. It's really, really contained. Within that, they're optimizing the rack spaces. So, putting machines or putting all the servers and switches in appropriate locations so that only certain racks are full. Where racks aren't full, we've got what we call blanking plates. So we're not just pushing cold air into empty areas. We're actually, all that cold air is going really, really where it's needed. And what that means they can do now, and what they're starting to do, we're starting it in our lab environment, and we're going to move it into production, just prove where we can get to, is actually just start to turn the cooling down. It's something really, really simple that you might think, you're going to blast these places, so they're like fridges. You really don't. They're going to start to turn the temperature up just gradually, 0.5 degree by 0.5 degree. And then in our non-production environment, I stress that, for customers listening, in the non-production environment, wait until we start to see some alerts coming. And then when those alerts start to come, they've realized they've got the optimum temperature for that setup at the time. Turn it back down again. Wait till the alerts go away, and they'll keep monitoring, maintaining at that level. And we'll look to expand that as and when we've got real good assurance around the performance of all the kit in there. That's just one area. What else are we doing?
Just slightly mid-flow though, Chris. So we are covered by 100% renewable energy at Focal Point and have been for some time. So that's our dedicated data center. And you've gone into some detail there about all the great efficiency measures that we are putting into place to reduce the burden on the data center. But why would that, to a layman, be important, given that we are covered by 100% renewables?
I think when we disclose both our location and market-based emissions, and what that means, in layman's terms is, or how I like to try and understand and explain it to people who don't know what that means is, market-based reporting allows you to measure or to disclose your consumption based on how much renewable electricity you're using. Location is actually reporting your consumption levels overall. What demand are you putting on the grid? So that, we know there's not enough renewable energy to go around at the moment. So if we use less, there's more for everyone.
And Callum, you mentioned in your section just about fleet as well and electrifying that. If I read that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, we in the UK, for example, operated a medium-sized fleet and used primarily, if not always, for field engineering works. That's a slightly different proposition in Europe, but in the UK, that's the focus. So there's quite a conversation to be had about logistical barriers, I suppose, Chris, as to how we actually transition to electric by the end of the decade, given the needs of the field engineers and on the kit, of course, that they're carrying around. And Europe, that's a slightly different proposition for not just logistical reasons, but also differences in governmental policy. And for Gamma specifically, there's conversations to be had, isn't there, Chris, about company vehicles, are they necessitated for operational works, or is it part of contracts and so on? But there are unquestionably challenges for us in getting to an electric fleet by 2030.
Yeah, and the things that we do, again, actually, just to say that, Gamma's been doing this for some time. We used to have diesels in the fleet, and now the guys, our UK field engineers, they're running there's on the fleet hybrid estates, and they've been doing so for a couple of years. So we're already kind of on this journey. Since my appointment, I've tried to push them down the route of, when can we get to EVs, guys? Well, there's plenty of EVs out there now, and we really want to be really challenging ourselves to be doing the right thing and to be transitioning. And I know there's lots of scrutiny over whether a big battery in a vehicle is actually more sustainable than a low emissions petrol car. But the reality is the science is there that proves over the lifespan of the vehicle, an EV is more carbon efficient when you take into account manufacturing it and disposal, all of that stuff that sort of you need to look at end to end. And actually, so I managed to get them last year to trial an EV for a month, and it was really interesting because what I thought, we looked at all of our data, did some really good analysis over the journeys that they do, and how often they, in theory, would need to charge if they were able to charge at home. That sort of good stuff. And the theory was backed up that they could do 80% of the journeys off a single charge. And the reality is, the guys carry a lot of gear. They've got lots of heavy equipment in there. And they drive all year round. What's widely known is battery performance does degrade in winter when it's colder. And some vehicles are better at handling that than others. But the ones that are available at the moment, and they weren't very good. So the charging was really, really, really challenging. And access to chargers and the cost of charging on the public network is really, really problematic. And that's something that we see is probably, it's beyond Gamma's control to resolve. But that being said, we still have this ambition. We are going to still push it. They're looking at, can they start to change the skill sets of the engineers so that we're targeting certain types of skill sets with certain types of vehicles rather than just having a uniform fleet of the same vehicle. Can we get plug-in hybrids in there for the guys that need the bigger vehicles, that need the bigger range? Can we look at geographically, is a footprint around London, they could probably get around in EVs a lot more comfortable than the guy who did the trial was up in Scotland. So
cool. So some really good examples there, and of course it is all about the carbon reduction plan that we've posted. I know, Callum, you do an awful lot around that. Is it still net zero for 2042? Is that still the target?
Long-term ambition, and it's an all encapsulating ambition, is to be net zero by 2042 for our scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions. And scope 3, very briefly, is everything else, shall we say. So things that we aren't necessarily in control of, our supplier emissions being the most dominant source in that piece. Roughly 90% of our scope 3 emissions we will inherit from the upstream emissions of our suppliers, which is why it's really key for us to engage at events like this and others with partner suppliers, and even customers to deliver our message, our expectations around sustainable procurement. Pleased to say, on the short-term net zero plan, scope 1 and 2, what we are directly in control of, we are currently ahead of where we need to be for 2030. And that's in part due to some of the great work that Chris is working on, some of the initiatives that he's just described.
Fantastic. Well, also I want to thank you both. I obviously work in the public sector unit specifically, and we have to publish carbon reduction plans to the Crown Commercial Service on an annual basis. And thank you very much for working on those and obviously getting those approved as well. So obviously we've got very good credibility in that space, which customers really find important. Would you agree with that? It's impact on customers.
I would like to think as well, now that we've been doing this so regularly since 2021, that there's a degree of familiarity with the work that we are doing and providing to our, let's say, public sector customers in this instance. And I think that breeds a certain amount of trust.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of corporates come under accusations of greenwashing or slightly embellishing credentials, whatever it may be. But we have consistently now disclosed consistent results and consistent narratives, which I hope help build our credibility in the space.
Well, I think we've gone that extra mile, haven't we? Or we're really pushing it because we were carbon neutral back in 2006, and I know that's a lot of offsetting programs. We're obviously going to net zero with much more weaponized, if you like, and aggressive targets, and it's all been managed very well as well. So so it's great. I mean, customers are really benefiting from that as well because they can safely say that they're using a supplier, it seems to me, that really is looking after the environment and wants to do better.
I'm glad, Sam, you mentioned the carbon neutrality, because I think that gives our net zero proposition a sense of authenticity as well, because we've been doing this for so long. We've been, as a company, active in this space. And of course, these frameworks and the best practices emerge, and as they will continue to evolve, we will need to move with the times as well. But this is something we've been interested in as a business for nearly 20 years now. So it's just fantastic to be able to join a business that has been so keen for a number of years to put sustainability on the agenda.
So guys, we've covered some really interesting areas. One of particular interest to me, working in the public sector, is really around circularity. So talk to me about the concept of circularity in e-waste.
Yeah, so what we've started to understand really is the impact of e-waste on a global scale. To create a server, to manufacture a server, it takes a disproportionately large amount of carbon to get there, from the mining of the raw material, the manufacturing, the transport, the in-use and the disposal. So what we're just becoming really more conscious of is actually what do we do at the end of life of the kit now. And we're really on in our journey, but there's some really, really fantastic options out there. We've been pretty good at, over the years, of recycling our own kit. None of that has gone to landfill for as long as I can remember. I've been in Gamma for about 12 years now. But actually, what we want to do is try and do more to try and get kit back from customers at the end of contracts, and that's what we're starting to explore now. So when it comes to sort of renewal, upgrading technology, we take back what we've given you first time round, and if we need to upgrade it, we'll make sure that goes back into the sort of the second-hand market where possible. And if it can't, if there's no value in it, if it's not suitable to be used by other organisations, that it hits somewhere, that it lands somewhere, who's going to dispose of those materials in a way that enables them to be reused. And we were talking about, enterprise grade or military grade shredding of the boards, the chipboards, and all the components within, using recycling plants that are going to take the metals out of it, melt those down, and sell them into other industries to become other products. And then there's actually a partner who I'm really, really keen to do more with. We've done our first collection from them in the last month, and we've got reports out where they have donated their proceeds, and this is a part of their process of what they do. They do this very philanthropically, if that's the right expression. They donate their proceeds to charity, and what they've done is they've donated. I think it's only a small collection. It was a pilot one. They've donated about £370 to Tameside Computer Centre in Manchester, who donate laptops into the community for people who don't have access to them, don't have affordability, and also donated the other half of the proceeds, another £340, to a charity called Sunscreen IT. What Sunscreen IT do is they deliver digital training and skills expertise for children in Gambia at the moment. It's a current project, so we're really, really looking to emphasise what we can do.
So a couple of great examples, great examples there. And circularity, you're right. I've just had flashbacks of all the environmental awareness training you get us guys to do on an annual basis, and the recycling.
Remember the images,
absolutely, So no, really, really useful. Very, very quickly, we're coming to the end, but and social value is important. So from a social perspective, can you just give us literally a minute and a half about what we're doing from a social perspective within Gamma?
Yeah, so we've got all sorts. The problem that we have with our social program is that we do so much. We don't centrally coordinate it, and that's something I'm trying to get a handle on with our people team at the moment. So we've got volunteer days for all of our staff, so everyone can give back. A day has a day a year they can give back on top of their annual leave to a charity of their choosing. We've got a charity forum that last year raised over £200,000 for different charities. If you look at our stand out there today, you can see the headline charities that we focused on. But those charities are all based around supporting us with our commitments to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So, talking about equality, talking about diversity, poverty, all of those subjects. These charities are really focused on those areas, and at the moment in the areas in which we operate. We run our communities, which are about having inclusive or encouraging and generating community of inclusivity within the business. We've got them focused on health and well-being, early careers for those new people joining Gamma, giving them a network of people who are in the same situation as those. We have our multicultural one, so we've got where we're able to learn from those people of different backgrounds within Gamma and able to celebrate the things that are important to them. Coming from living in a sort of a predominantly Christian country, Christian community. The women in Gamma one is they've had leadership. They've arranged leadership courses, leadership training, had inspirational speakers coming in. They've got mentorship programs running. It's a really, really powerful one. So why it slipped my mind, I've no idea. But it's really, really great. And this is all good things to encourage people from different backgrounds into sort of senior roles, more experienced roles, give them opportunities they might not have otherwise had having been doing these things. No. It's just a flavour. We do so much. We do so much in this space.
That's absolutely fantastic. Callum, Chris, thanks very much for a good overview around the social value program that we have at Gamma. There is a lot more content than that, and I know we have an environmental report on an annual basis as part of our annual report as well. Thanks very much for listening to the Social Value Podcast.